going to do a little stance practice. I'm inside this time. A very, very long day, and no good opportunity to teach a lesson here. So I'm making a few minutes here, although I'm pretty low energy. That's good. Yeah, we can see the feet. Okay, good. I'm going to just call this up so I can see if there's any questions and who I can share it with, as you know. So I'm going to do a little bit of sharing here. This is usually what we're doing. And then we'll get to practicing. I think I have a kind of fun one in mind today. We'll see how that goes. Hi Marissa, hello. Yay, good to see you. I'm actually, that's great. I'm just thinking about you guys. Hi Deirdre, glad to see you. And One Fist Way is here too. I should have a Mook Jong to practice with. So I probably don't have an awful lot of energy. It's been about 14 hours of teaching straight. And I have another class, and I definitely need to eat, so my energy feels low. But we're going to give this a try. So sink, rise, sink, rise. I'm going a little faster, see if I can stir up a third or fourth wind. But same practice I've been doing all along. I could probably try and remember to lower my voice because we're indoors for the first time doing this. Got too dark. I was already in here teaching a class. So sink, rise, sink, rise, sink, rise. The knee, the hip, change angles. Tailbone drops towards the Achilles or thereabout. You know, the line we might describe by my heels or my Achilles or thereabouts. In other words, my tailbone's not dropping way to the rear and certainly not coming forward, kicking my knees too far forward. Keeping my spine vertical, continually breathing. Working on posture, attention, structure, releasing shoulders, keeping the weight centered in the feet so I don't start forward, I don't end to the rear, I don't start on the inside, end up on the outside, I don't start on the rear and end up in the rear, etc. I'm spread through the feet using, the whole of the foot. Pretty sure the whole of the foot is what I'm meant to be standing on, not just some parts. Okay. I put a staff here that maybe a bit of a contrast in color might be easy to see when we start talking about lines. And I have this line kind of facing camera, which I'll try and just call west because it's close to west, sort of south, southwest, I guess. But we'll just say west, probably simpler. I have a cane if that's something that we'll need as we go. And we're going to try a little exercise for the inguinal crease, for the hip flexors, for the psoas, for what we call the gua in Chinese Kung Fu. And for my purposes here, what I'd like you to do is just have a stance that's a little bit longer than it is wide. But it can be on the narrow side. It can be on the wider side. It can be fairly open or not so fairly open. I'll do a few in profile. So it can be fairly narrow, not so narrow. It can be very open, not so open, somewhere in the middle. Doesn't really matter to me for our purposes. So if you have a stance that you normally do, your forward stance, your gongbu stance, your forward stance, your front stance, your bow stance, you can use that. I just want a stance that's going to allow me a fair amount of shift towards the camera and away from the camera without making it such a challenge for my balance that I really kind of experience as a balance exercise. That's all. So I'll start in this, not a stance that I've taught here yet, but that's just where I am. My rear foot open a bit, my front foot facing camera, and shifting, right? I guess I'll do this in profile too. So just shifting. And I just want to make sure that the shifting is not leading with the shoulders, leading with the head, leading with the chest. I want to make sure my shifting isn't leaving my butt behind. I want to make sure my shifting isn't leading with the butt, leading with the belly, or what have you. In other words, vertical shifting, front to back. Nothing new about that. This is what we're interested in when we're doing stance training. And actually, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the sort of profile when I teach this. So I have my feet nice and stable. I'm not in a particularly challenging stance or a particularly challenging version of that stance. I'm just pretty comfortable, but I have enough room that I feel like this shifting can be the primary experience, as opposed to, we could say I'm technically in the same stance, but I mean, I guess I'm shifting forward and back, but by the time I say shh, I'm done. So maybe here, shifting, and kind of revel in that experience. Okay, I was going to do profile. Okay. Hey Drew, hi Deborah. Yay, I get hearts and Hardanjali and smiles and oh, I see heart and then like a Hawaii emoji, I guess, an island. Fantastic. I'm sitting here looking at a couple things from Hawaii here in the studio. So definitely thinking about you. Okay, so here's the practice. Pretty straightforward, right? I'm going to come forward. I'm going to turn my trunk to the open side of the stance. So if my left foot's back, that's to my left. And I'm going to turn back forward. And then I'm going to turn a bit to the closed side of the stance, which right foot forward is to my right. And then I'll come back center. So I'm facing where my front foot faces. And I'll shift to the rear. I'm going to turn to the open side, turn to the closed side, come back to center. It helps me square myself and correct anything. Shift forward, open side, center, closed side, center, back, open, center, closed, forward, forward, open, forward, close. Now this could be done turning to the closed side first. It could be done without pausing in the center to collect and correct ourselves. It could just be done to the closed side as I shift my weight. But the open side is going to tend to be easier for folks, and coming into a chance where we can collect and correct ourselves is always advisable in a new practice. And that, while I say new practice, this might also be an old practice, but you are a new person coming to it because you're just post-surgical, or you're post-injury, or you're presently ill, or recovering from illness, or recently grew older, or felt older. So shift, open side, center, closed side, center. Shift, open side, center, closed side. Now, a couple things to focus on, and I just did that fast. I normally do this a little bit slower, coordinate with the breath. Let's see if we can emphasize the leg here. So my femur is pointing towards you, my foot's pointing towards you. So when I shift and I turn, that femur hasn't moved, the knee hasn't fallen inward. When I come back to center, the knee didn't head to the outside. And when I turn, that femur and knee stay there. And then when I turn back, they stay. If I was to turn again, they stay. They don't do something like this. I don't even want to demonstrate that. Now, when I come back here, it's not so important. I'm actually rolling my foot to exaggerate. That's not so important if this happens to do that. I don't want to do that. I'd like to keep it where I put it. But it's less important without the weight on it. So I'm doing the same thing on the rear leg as I was doing. So I'll just change because this pant leg is already up. I'll do a slight off angle so you can see. So keeping this in place, keeping it in place, keeping it in place, keeping it in place. Putting this in place, so knee tracks to the in the same direction as the foot. Keeping it in place, thinking about this leg, the weighted leg. keeping it in place as I recenter, and then keeping it in place as I turn. Let's see if I can do that. So that points to you, so I'm at this angle. So I come back, open side, center, closed side without moving this, right? So that's not new, but that's a challenge to consider when we do this. Particularly if we start thinking like, hey, this is what I'm trying to stretch. I'm thinking about this inguinal crease. I'm thinking about expressing it, exercising it, stretching it, maybe strengthening it. Our focus can shift away from our principles, right? When our focus shifts away from our principles, we may come into an understanding that they were not principles, they were just preferences, right? I'll try and write that down as we practice. Good. And I see a note there from you, One Fist Way, but I'll try and get to it in a moment. Okay, try to make a point there so that I can update. So we can also just stay in either of these positions, which I'm going to try and do now. I know I'm typing too. We can stay in these positions and coordinate with the breath. Center. All right, good. I think I did it. So if I was to do that with the breath, I'd probably recommend exhale on the twist, inhale on the return, exhale on the open, inhale on the return, shift, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale. It can be done a number of different ways, it's fine. But generally with the twist to the outside and try and coordinate that with an exhale, that's going to sit better with an exhale initially for beginners than any other breathing. Opening to the open side, you could inhale, you could do it anaerobic, you could exhale, you could just kind of let it be natural. But I'd really focus on exhale when I turn to the open side. So that's the practice. I think I meant to do it this way, so I'm not sure which side, but I guess I can turn away from camera since I'm not outside, even though I'm not mic'd. There's not going to be much in the way of wind noise. And so what I want to do with this practice is stretch and promote the circulation in this inguinal crease, the hip region, the qua, and perhaps strengthen it, particularly if we did this in a more challenging stance or for longer durations or to a lower level of this stance. And when I was talking, I was skipping some of them, I was shifting rather than turning, so I could come into a few shifts and then add the twist when I'm ready for it. And I could certainly do the whole thing where I always open to the open side, return to center at the end, open side, center, difficult side, center, shift. So I can kind of have a pattern that I stick to, and I can also just kind of work the one that I'm ready to work when I'm ready to work it. So that's a little sort of qua exercise. I want to kind of introduce a stance. So I'm going to come into horse stance while I read the note. Pushing off the rear leg, pulling forward with the rear, pushing off the forward and pulling back with the rear. Ebb and flow, yeah, it's a really nice ebb and flow. It's like a bamboo exercise. And you talk about pushing and pulling, and you can certainly vary that, or where's the impetus coming from? Am I grabbing with the feet, pulling with the front leg, pushing with the rear? What point am I catalyzing my movement from? You know, for example, here or here or here, a couple of nice ideas. But I haven't turned this into a shifting and pivoting and stepping drill. Hi Jim, good to see you. So whatever we're going to do it for now is fine. So what I want to do is introduce I'm just trying to have a sip of water. I'd like to introduce a boxer stance today. As with all of these stances in this True Beginners class or series, this guide, there are many ways to do stances that share the name of the stance that I give when I teach it. And I know a number of different versions of a lot of these stances, maybe all. But I'm just picking one that's accessible and I feel teachable over the internet. So I'm going to teach a boxer stance. It's going to be very easy for you to say, well, I box, Golden Gloves, here's a boxer stance. Well, there's a lot of boxer stance. This is not called the only boxing stance or the boxer's only stance, right? And of course I'm keeping it brief. That was a pun. So the boxer stance, the way I'd like to teach it today, is we'll start by kind of referencing this line. So hopefully you can see the staff on the floor. And so I'm going to start about shoulder width apart, which is a common reference in stance training. So I have like a little horse stance here. I'm just facing you. Here's my horse stance. And what I'm going to practice doing is having just for my example here, I'm going to have my left foot essentially on the line, but I'm just like an inch away from the line or something, so I'm not actually touching the stuff, I'm just close to it. This one is essentially a shoulder width away from that line. I guess 1 inch shy of that shoulder width. And I'm parallel. And what I'm going to do is shift my weight and open my right leg. So here I am in the center, I shift to the leg that's near to the line. And of course normally I just practice this without a stick. And as soon as I shift, I've defined that line. So if I shift it to my right, now I have that line defined, which means I would open my other leg. But you guys have what I hope is the benefit of seeing the line. So I'm close to the line with the leg that's going to take the weight. I shift to that leg, open this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go along that line. I'll step my foot. So here we are, shift, open, shift again. That will allow me to step. And I'm going to step that just about half that distance, or twice that distance. So that's going to be about 2 steps, or so 2 foot lengths or so, right? So that my feet have, I'll show you my little model here. So my feet were something like this, and here's, I'll use my center line as the line. So I'm here, so that's on the center line. And this foot turns, and then I put my weight on it. And then this one stepped, I'll come back to this in a moment. This one stepped about to here. Just like that. Pretty straightforward, right? So this is going to be about there. Okay? And as with most of these, when we're describing something like the distances, it's all going to depend on your range of motion, the amount of stretching and challenge that you want, how low you want to be, what your stability is, and your size. So we don't really want to be teaching stances by saying 16.34 inches here, 14.3 degrees to the right. We're using terms like shoulder width, which gives me a sense of something appropriate for my body. But it's not just my body's physical geometry. It's how flexible I am, how heavy I am, how challenged my joints are, how vital my joints are, how low I want to go. Do I want to get an endurance workout out of this, or do I want to work on my stability? Do I want to work on stretching? What's my balance like? If I get into a tough position, can I get out? So again, I'm just adjusting about a 1 and then a 2 for my step. So I've kind of put my heel where my toe was, about, and then done the same thing again, and that's going to be about where I want to be. So it's going to be a bit of a longer stance than it is wide, right? Much like we were doing in the quad exercise, where I'm a little bit longer than I am wide. That quad exercise can be done in an awful lot of different stances, and that's why I didn't really describe a stance so much as a category stance that might help you get the stretch. You could do the quad exercise in the horse stance as well. Okay, so we're going to do that again. Remember that the foot that's on the line is just offset from the line a little bit, and we're going to see why that is in a moment. But there's my step. I'll just check in. Hey, Alex is here, and Stephen again, fantastic. Hey Bill, how are you? Good to see you. So you guys should check out Alex. Alex does a live stream every day, way better than me, way better. He cooks better than me too. He competes better. Anyway, Alex is altogether better than me. And Heike is better than Alex, so you have that too. But you should get to know Alex, follow him. He does a daily William C.C. Chen style practice with a moving camera, which is amazing. So here we go again. Really simple. So following our principles, because without our principles, there is nothing. Shift, open, shift, step. Okay? Now I'm going to take the left foot that stepped, that still has a little bit of distance between it and the line, and I'm going to toe the foot in towards the line. So hopefully you guys can see that. I'm going to see if I can rudimentary add a little flashlight. Maybe that gives you guys a little bit more light there. So I've stepped and I've toed it in. Good. Hopefully you can see that. So we'll try that again. I'm going to do that without the line as my reference this time. So 1, 2, and 3. I'll do that in profile this time. 1, 2, 3, and then in a bit. Okay? If we think about myself just being an inch or so from that line, when I toe it in, I'm not going to end up toeing it in 45 degrees, right? Because here, if I did that and I tried to toe it in 45 degrees, then I violated the line, which of course we can see because I didn't have a tape line. We could hear it as well. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Now since I want to pivot that foot, I don't want to put my weight on it yet. So open, shift, step, keeping the weight on the rear and here. And again, that's a little bit of a practice of our quad work in order to open, bear the weight, turn the body to make the step. If I had stepped here and tried to step, that's a real challenge. It can be done, but most of us are going to step here and experience the quad change as we step, and experience the subtle quad change as I turn in. Good. So I'll do that a little bit closer, see if that works. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do that again. 1, 2, 3, here, in. Good. Do that in profile, I suppose, while I'm close. Here, here. You might notice when I do this step, this femur tracking with the foot, which is near to the camera, pointing to the camera, stays there. So I step. And when I turn this foot in, that knee doesn't go out. It turns in. Right? There's my principles. 1, 2. My principles are to love the knee, care for the knee, love the knee, always, always, always. You only get 2, And most people, it seems, run through about 3 or 4 in a lifetime. Sounds really costly. So we're going to try this again. We're going to build on it. 1, 2, 3, 4. From here, I'm going to shift my weight, and I'm going to just shift a little bit less than half onto that front foot, right? So maybe 60-40, something like that. In the ballpark of a third to 40% of my weight will go to the front leg. So I'll do that again. 1, 2, toe in, and then bring the weight a little bit forward. Generally doing the stance, the guy that I'm dealing with is in that direction described by the staff, described by the camera. But often the boxer's not going to square with the person, they're going to blade to them a little bit. So having this long and narrow stance, relatively speaking, right, it's not wide and shallow, it's long and narrow, and toeing in the foot are all going to help me not be here, but be a little bit here. To kind of load up my power hand, for example, make myself a smaller target, and also be able to use my peripheral vision a little. Anyway, a whole bunch of fun reasons. So here, 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 and then shift. Okay? So we're about ready to do it and hold it. You might be wondering why we brought the cane today, but as I finish the stance, you're going to kind of start to see why. And so if you need a cane or similar, something that's certain to support you, close enough to support you when you need it, not too far away. We've covered this in the other episodes. Have that at the ready. You don't want it near but not near enough where you encourage an imbalance to seek extrinsic balance, and you certainly don't want something that's not going to support you, like an office chair with wheels or a so-so countertop that might give way, right? So, I guess I'll do it again since I'm talking here. Checking in on comments. Patricia's back, so is Robert. Hello, hello. Okay, open, shift, step, turn, shift, not fully. So you could say I'm in the middle of my stance. I'm just slightly favoring the rear. And then from here, I'm going to float both heels so that I'm on the balls of the feet. I'm going to turn my head to the front. We haven't really talked enough about arms, shoulders, head. But when I do the boxing stance, I really want to kind of come into the way I was trained. And so this is, for whatever reason, much harder than me taking a Santi stance and not doing the whole Santoshi. So now I have my heels just floated, right? And this is going to be where people are going to start to go, oh boy, you know, where is that? How do can I do, like, I need a balance. So if you need it, it's there. But the practice, yeah, so I want to do the hands. So the practice of the stance is to be on the balls of the feet, heels floated, tracking the knees where you want. Generally, what we want to feel is that left foot is kind of tracking to point to the rear foot of your partner, your opponent, right? In other words, it's just to their rear side as it's toed in, right? And be something like this. So as soon as people come up on the heels, they tend to over-tighten the butt. They may tend to shoot the butt out. They may certainly tend to lean forward and or kind of get a little bit like this. But I want to settle in like we practice doing squats or horse stance training. Just settle in on the balls of the feet. Now a boxer would be here with a lot of movement, so they wouldn't practice this static or certainly be caught static. But they also don't want to be caught flat-footed, so we have those heels up, and we have a sense here that I can push at any point with either leg, right? To move left or right, forward or back, right? And I can drive and pivot with either foot as I punch, as I'm resting on these pivot points, the balls of the feet. So just watch out for now that as you do this, you don't kind of end up here, right? Where you're using your abs and your back to help find your balance instead of make the legs do the work. Stand atop your legs and have your legs atop your feet. Good. So let's try this again. I was just wondering if I should step all the way into it or just, just kind of jump one after the other. But I think I talked about getting into it an awful lot, so let's just try this. I don't see any questions, so we'll do this for a couple minutes. Hi Bob, welcome, welcome. So glad you're here again, Patricia, thank you. You guys should follow Patricia for a lot of great comedy posts that might be cries for help about motherhood, but maybe if you don't have a true empathetic connection to your fellow human like me, you just see them as comedy posts. But it's worth getting to know her, I think. So stay sat in, but not into the heels, into the balls, so the knees track forward, the tailbone drops, the body feels a bit short. Try not to shift the weight. Know where it is. I'm a little favoring the rear. I have a sense of facing this, I'll call forward, camera. But my lead foot is a little, from my point of view, a little left of camera. And so my foot's here and my eyes are here just a little bit. My torso's a little bit more turned away from the camera than my lead foot. And my rear foot is open quite away from camera. Good. So let's give this about 20 more seconds. All right. Very easy to be in a stance like this and fight, 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 rather than rest, rest, settle. There's still a lot of work going on in the legs, but I don't want to be in a contrarian position psychologically with that work. I want to rest in that work. That was probably about 20. So let's try to settle into this for a minute. As soon as I take it, I want to, lift the shoulders, drop the ears, right? Pace the hand. It's funny. Check in that you haven't come forward, that you're settled. I want to feel the workout in the legs. After a little bit of wild, hi Jared, good to see you, sir. I'll see you tomorrow night, I'm sure, for our Zoom class. We do a standing class, by the way, folks. Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern. It's free to Patreon members, small charge for Zoom, and it's free in person if you're around. We do it outside, socially distanced. It's just a half hour, 11 a.m. Eastern, but we're working on each one, and that includes a whole lot of standing practices. So I'd say that was about a minute there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that boxing stance or boxer stance, and I'm going to practice that quad exercise with it. Right? 1, 2, 3, here. 1, 2, 3, forward. So all the time on the balls of the feet, but now I'm exploring the different weight in the stance, and you might not feel a lot of emphasis on the quad. On this one, it might just be, I guess your calves would be getting tired by now. I don't know. Good. But just as a little review of that and a little cool down, I guess, before I have to log into Zoom again, because that happens. Good. And this is a nice one to practice pivoting and so forth in if we were to get that far. So if you're interested in this and you want to see a stance I haven't done, write in the comments or message me. And if we keep this going for a while, I may add some pivots and shifts and stepping in addition to stances and really keep this going. But if I don't see an interest in the world, and my creativity will find a different outlet, and it may not be online. So anyway, that's a little review of the the quad warm-up that we were doing, and that should be a nice little cool down. I'm going to, I don't know how much time I have. Yeah, 2 minutes, and then I gotta be on another session. So I'll post this shortly, maybe overnight, something like that, and you can follow along the whole thing. Thank you all, and make sure you thank Matt Stamp for suggesting this. Hi Tommy, good to see you, my brother. There's a hat for you. All right, much love, bye.